What's going on, guys? Goosehead the 13th here with some discussion for the developer blog Volume 3 for Gundam Evolution, as well as some results from the current test survey from the last network test. So starting off here, usual greetings and whatnot, but we immediately get into it. Most of the stuff for the dev blog is actually just unit adjustments based on what they saw and what people were saying. And of course, the first one to come up right off the bat is Barbatos. The interesting thing here is that most of what they talk about here is more so about not so much changing Barbatos right off the bat, although that does come a little bit at the end, but mostly it talks about other suits that were supposed to be counters to it that weren't quite performing. So we have a couple of examples. Turn A and Marasai were not working as intended as the development team assumed their skills to function as counters. I'll state it again later in the blog. And Barbatos users tended to focus on playing Barbatos exclusively, which seemed to create a big difference in the pilot skill with those who were playing multiple units, and that's pretty real. Mostly because it was a very good solo suit. If you were just trying to get certain dailies done, or if you were really just trying to do as much damage and, you know, have as much action on the screen as possible, you could just kind of fling yourself as this suit, get some good kills once you figured out the combo, and just keep on trucking. The raid distribution was random, which allowed players with high skills and people with low skills to be easily matched. So yeah, some people were griping about that. Other people were also griping about some of the ways that stacked teams or teams that were squatting together were just kind of matched all willy-nilly. There were a lot of folks that weren't too keen on that, and of course when the ratings were all low and people were just kind of climbing and trying to split apart from each other, that also posed a bit of an issue. So then we move on. On the other hand, the winning percentage tends to be stable in the high rate band, where it is possible to distinguish the precursor sounds to understand and execute the counter actions. So of course when people started to understand some of the tells and cues of the suit at higher cost or higher rating, it was getting countered a little bit easier. But once we get down to this, we'll start seeing what some of the adjustments are. So what they talk about, as an adjustment policy, we plan to balance the range of attacks for mace hit and sword, and adjust easy/simple actions and adding adjustments to speed of the dash. We aim to make these adjustments while keeping the parts the players loved about the Barbatos as much as possible. So it seems like they might be messing with some of the reach, maybe just the hitboxes in general. Kind of makes me wonder how much they're actually going to adjust the speed of the dash itself. Not to mention, it's a pretty strong traversal suit, so yeah, I feel like it's going to be a very light wrist tap, and they're just going to try to bulk up other things, as we're going to see here. So Turn A is first on the list for this. Turn Out's attack loadout includes the beam rifle, Tomanage, which is the judo throw, and then the Moonlight Butterfly, unique skill with higher difficulty in piloting. This unit was rarely used during the network test, we think, due to the difficulty in playstyle. In particular, the overhead throw was supposed to be a counter to melee attackers like Barbatos, who was mentioned earlier, but it was not functioning well due to various reasons. Mainly, we feel that there was a general lack of awareness of how the skill's intended use, in addition to problems with the implementation. I like how they're like, I don't think you guys are using it right, but it was also kind of shitty, so they immediately just kind of pulled back on it. I was like, no, but we are going to try to change it. So we have a couple things here. Improved bullet speed of the beam rifle when doing the charge mode. Improved overhead throw, which at this point there actually is a adjustment video that shows off the difference. And an improved usability of Moonlight Butterfly. I don't know if they're thinking about just changing the way that you traverse in the air in general, because I'm pretty sure the way that you move there is the same way that you move in other transform modes. So we'll just see. Maybe they just make it a little bit more, I don't know, just slow it down. Try to make it a little bit more wieldable. But we have a video here. Check this out real quick. A little bit of before and after. So I'm going to be honest with you. A couple things I don't like about these videos right out of the gate is that I get that they're trying to stress that, oh, this is something you can use against the Barbatos in the one on the right, but I feel like they probably should have just had them in the same scenario so that you can kind of tell the traversal and speed a little bit easier. But it does seem like it is a bit quicker. Like, you don't even really see the arms go up or anything for the animation on the right. Although, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know a lot of Barbatosis who would probably try to zoom at you like that at all, so I don't know how relevant that is either. But yeah, I would like to see this more so in practice in regular matches. We'll just have to wait for maybe the next network test for consoles and whatnot, because they do mention that towards the bottom. So Marasai similarly was supposed to be a counter for the melee using the unit Sea Serpent, or the towing Sea Serpent, so you're just essentially trying to hook and pull people. Had a long lead time to activation. It was difficult to attack fast-moving machines, hence it was rarely used. However, the Sea Serpent was also a powerful skill that has the high possibility of defeating with subsequent hits. Literally just Serpent into Fork, nail them with both of your skills at once, and you pretty much got a one and done. Hell, sometimes, depending on how hurt they already are, you can just get them with a rifle shot and call it a day. So yeah, definitely strong, but definitely a bit slow for a game like this. So first we aim to make it easier to play the original role by adjusting the front end gap of the Sea Serpent towing skill. Additionally, I'm considering adjusting the performance of the main weapon if necessary when observing the result of the previous skill and adjustment. So once again, we have another example video here. Definitely faster. This one's a little bit easier to tell. And not only is it actually just, and that might be part of the language, but not only is it just faster to come out, but it actually reels them in quicker too, which is nice. I will also say, when trying to read through some of this, as you can probably tell just from me reading it a lot or looking at it on the screen, although sorry if it's a little too small, a lot of this was just kind of roughly machine translated and then barfed out on the on the English side, which is a little unfortunate, though coming from Battle Operation 2, they do a similar thing. I don't really think they have anyone bothering to localize any of this, not to mention, as it is in Japanese, there's a lot of players and stuff I mentioned. There's a lot of different concepts and quantifiers in here that are a lot easier to describe in English than they are in Japanese, so even Japanese people are struggling to try to explain this sort of thing to each other. And sometimes I'll see that on occasion in like different banter back and forth on Twitter, because most of the time the responses are like, What did you just say? What does that mean? What? What's that word? You know, so across the board, just communication stuff. Hopefully at some point maybe we get some more community people to try to figure out some of the localization and make it a bit easier, or at least a little bit easier to read. And then we go into the Gym Sniper 2. So one of the bigger gripes with this is that people were absolutely getting their heads fucking lopped. We actually talked about this on the podcast for GBO2 a little bit when we were doing our intros and stuff, that sniper suits in general tend to have this idea of like, we don't want to mess with the headshots. There have been some cases of them making the criticals a little less severe in the past, only for them to be reeled back. Someone brought up Widowmaker as an example. I would love to hear people's opinions on this who have actually played a lot more Overwatch, because I have very limited experience in that, and just with sniper classes in general across other shooters, if there's ever been any attempts to try to adjust them or to maybe nerf them when it comes to those headshot crits. It was pretty crazy, but you have to understand that, like, especially from a shooter aspect, that's just something that's always going to be a part of it for that class, because the second you take that away, especially when you have high traversal, high speed, crazy bullshit like Barbatos or just other assault suits running around that are already going to be on their ass, you know, by default, that's a very dangerous line to mess with, and it takes them from being kind of busted in the right hands to suddenly just being a joke and never picked again. So as you can see, they're talking about, however, hit scan immediate shooting weapons critical rate is higher than we thought, though this test similarly was very easy for the Gym Sniper 2 to deal critical hits. Since we want to make the rate of critical hits proportional to the player's skill, we're planning to adjust the collision to judge critical hits. If there is still a problem after making this adjustment, we will consider changing the size of the bullet for judgment. Ultimately, I would like to measure and assess the detail very carefully. So they are essentially being like, we hear ya, We're gonna try to change everything about the aspect of the weapon before we change the and maybe crits to a smaller degree before we absolutely take that out in any case. So there have been some people who have also been griping about headshots being kind of silly in a Gundam game where like most of those suits don't even have the cockpits for the pilots in the heads. It's actually in the chest and stuff like that. But getting a free kill for shooting center mass would be equally silly, and it's ultimately still a shooter at the end of the day, so I don't know. Mileage will vary on that. They also do mention down here, like we said before, about the console test that's going to be coming up soon. Hopefully we'll be getting some more announcements about that as well. I don't know if I'm going to do it personally, maybe just out of curiosity, because I doubt that there's going to be a lot of crossover or anything with that, so I'll probably just be sticking to PC since a lot of the people that I was squatting with were on there anyway. And then we move on. And this one's a little bit more long-winded, but the just general survey results, we can try to generalize some of this stuff as well. So general impression, I love how that's actually a thing on here. Very good. I feel like on most of these, anyone who actually bothered to do the survey, they left most of their gripes in the lower stuff that we'll be doing. They try to summarize a lot of the people's like final notes or extra things that they mentioned further down, but we can get into different things for the units. And there's also, like I said, here's some examples of what they were saying. So the pace of the battles were exciting. The units weren't bound to a specific role, which made many of them fun to play. I don't want my rating to go down due to team members quitting mid-battle. This one is actually one that I griped about a lot, mostly because, and again, this is me coming from Battle Operation 2, where having someone leave mid-battle would mean that you would get a point modifier if you were playing rated. That would actually counteract most of what you would lose in most cases. You would have to go down pretty severely in your rival loss to actually have anything happen to that. And funny enough, they just did an adjustment to rival loss points in GBO2 like literally yesterday. So like that's a non-issue across the board if it ever was. So going into this and having certain situations where you're like already a match in and they're like, well, you're gonna have to keep playing and you're also still gonna be penalized accordingly even if you get absolutely stomped, so have fun and enjoy the extra challenge, I guess. Like, that's stupid. That was shitty. So I hope them recognizing some of the reviews and requests here means that they are either gonna do just straight up adjustments or at least consider that in the future. Let's go on down the line. That was a big one for me, so I just wanted to talk about that one a little bit more. I've noticed cases of harassment in the voice chat and text chat. I'm gonna be honest, I saw one or two really dumb things in text chat. I immediately turned off voice chat. I do most of my stuff on Discord. I didn't really see a lot of that. I would love to look at maybe other people's VODs who maybe had it on, because I know a lot of people tend to keep it on for content or just entertainment's sake or just to see what people are legitimately saying. I feel like that last one is probably the least reason in a lot of cases, especially for streamers, but you never know. I've been forcibly disconnected from the client. This one is a little unfortunate. Gaming Emblem and a couple other people that I was with did have some really bad DCs, and because of the severity of you being disconnected, especially mid-game or whatever, causing penalties, some of them got banned from the game for pretty much the rest of the playtest, simply because of connection issues. So that was really goofy. I know it was a network test, but like, man, pretty rough impression just from that. I'd like a tutorial that explains the rule set. This is something that's interesting because this is something that we also don't have in Battle Operation 2, even though they do have their own tutorials for how to play the game overall in other very specific scenarios. So you would think they would also do it for rules. Most of the time, at least in Battle Operation 2, they have these info screens that come up. If you're playing the mode or whatever for the first time, you can also hit options on certain things to look at that and review it. But having a more hands-on tutorial would also be nice, on top of maybe just having some screens come up during the loading or whatever, depending. So I can agree with that. I don't understand how to use the stamps, emotes, and other set phrases. I had a certain amount of understanding for that, just because it's something that's been done in other games. There were a lot of people who were asking, how do you get to like emotes and the set phrases and stuff? To my understanding, the set phrases didn't even work. None of those are actually running. Like, we try to hit them and just nothing. So hopefully they fix that or realize that that was busted as well. I'd like aim assist when using a gamepad on PC. I did try for a very brief moment to use gamepad. It didn't feel super great, gonna be honest. I know there's a lot of people who do tend to do a lot of shooters on gamepads. Oh my goodness, you guys are champions if you're actually kind of cracked at it, but I couldn't. So yeah, I don't know about aim assist. That's all. A friend of mine who plays Apex is always talking about how aim assist and stuff for controller users, especially when it comes to crossplay and stuff, has been a very big point of contention. Kinda don't want them to mess with that, but we'll just have to see what they do. I'd like custom matches in which players can set rules as they like. This is interesting because obviously we had this in GBO2. I feel like having access to this in other games like M-Bond kind of killed the public scene faster than it was already being killed off simply by just having a release. That being said, a lot of other games like this, to my understanding, still just have custom lobbies or just server like search areas in order to do it. Actually, I'm a little curious as to how that works for things like Overwatch and whatnot, because I feel like most of the things that I see are people just doing ranked and whatnot and just doing regular matchmaking. Let's see, so Operation Team's comments. Okay, so we received a lot of positive feedback about Evolution, but we will take all opinions into consideration and use them to further improve the game. Additionally, we would like to address some of the requests you sent us. Here we go. So let's start with the rate system. We will make some adjustments to the system, taking into account the feedback gathered in the course of the network test. Another issue that was reported was harassment. Here too, your reports will serve as a groundwork for the improvements in which will lead to a better gaming experience. I don't know how they're going to mess with that other than just extra stuff to report. I don't know about that. We have also been notified about users being forcibly disconnected from the client, as well as been notified for the development and the operation team. You know, that's just part of the network test in and of itself, although it is very unfortunate. Moreover, we noticed some concerns about rules and communication tools and decided that we will work on how to disclose this information more clearly, such as using our official website or by social media channels. We also noticed that a lot of players are asking for custom matches where you can set your own rules. We will take that idea into consideration. I do kind of wonder how quickly they are going to try to do that, if at all. But it is nice and interesting that they actually take that and like recognize that. Finally, we also received several requests for the implementation of aim assist when using a game plan. Unfortunately, we have determined that such a measure would be unfair to other players. Oh. Which means that aim assist will only be available on console versions. We kindly ask you for your understanding. This is also interesting because this kind of just puts the nail in the coffin, because I know at least early on people were asking about whether there's going to be crossplay or not. There's not going to be. The fact that they actually had separate network tests and stuff probably should have tipped me off about that anyway. But you know, things to keep in mind. Going down the list here, we also have stuff for the other units, just general takes. So very good. Gundam was just kind of a little bit more meh. Zaku 2, a little bit more balanced. Barbatos, wow. So this is probably one of the bigger ones for... I wonder how many of these who said very bad or bad either didn't do well with it or just didn't like dealing with it. And there's actually a pretty sizable group of people who just didn't play. Methus, oh boy. This one I'm not super surprised to see a high percentage for didn't play. As a healer and just general support unit, yeah, this seems about right. Sazabi, of course, having a little bit more towards very good. Sniper 2 didn't play, also not super surprising, but Ashimar getting 25% is a little strange. I feel like there was a lot of good talk about the Ashimar, especially just its burst down and the fact that it can do area control with the napalm and whatnot. But there's a lot of people who just didn't deal with it. The other thing to keep in mind is that some of this data might be a little bit, at least slightly skewed, just due to how the dailies were picking suits for you to do in relation to some of those. One thing in particular that I'm still kind of griping about, and they didn't really seem to acknowledge, was that some of them, like critical hit finishes, weren't really being applied to proper suits. Like the gun tank can't do that with its setup. Kind of goofy. Not sure why they did that. Hopefully they fix what suits are assigned to what dailies in the future. Also, speaking of a boy, the gun tank, kind of sad. So gun tank gym, anything that was essentially not a Gundam in a lot of cases, or at least not a recognizable suit to most of the Western base, not played. I'm actually very surprised at Pale Rider, other than it was just constantly in the dailies and people probably were just like, it's a standard Soldier 76 suit, easy to understand, right? But then we get to like Turn A. Turn A got a whole lot of I didn't play. Jim and gun tank, of course, because this is a jobber suit and this is just a shitty support suit. Exia and Marasai are a little interesting just because you did have to unlock those. I'm surprised people just didn't do that out of the gate in order to just use them for the test, since most of that wasn't going to translate over anyway. That being said, general opinion for Exia was that, you know, it wasn't Barbatos. Marasai, I feel like there were some people that were really starting to figure it out towards the end and were doing really well in it, but, you know, generally just not used. So I'm not super surprised by any of these percentages. I'm a little disappointed in some of them, I guess. I feel like I tried to spread around, at least for most of it, although I will say that gun tank was a pretty easy one. They definitely got the suit difficulty for that one right, and I did not mind being in that role most of the time. For me, it was mostly gun tank, Dom Trooper. Ashimar I didn't mind, and I feel like in a lot of cases I had to run Methus just because, like, no one was really doing support role stuff. And more often than not, it was just like, you know what, I'll just do it. Screw it. So here we go, we get into unit reviews and requests. Different roles and unique skills made each unit different and more enjoyable. I like the dash system and added speed to the gameplay. It seems unfair that Gundam Barbatos can be defeated using a single combo. Does that actually mean it can defeat things in a single combo, or just because it was kind of frail? Jim Sniper 2 is too powerful. Just straight up. Nothing else, just too strong. Sazabi's resistance, too high. It's hard to target the Marasai snake, which, you know, they already addressed that. Turning on those overhead rolls, difficulties, Moonlight Butterflies, difficult to control. So both of these have been addressed already in the thing so far. In that other letter that we saw. And Sazabi's resistance being too high, considering the sheer size, it is frustrating just because that shield is a bit of a bitch, but I don't know what else they would really do with that other than just, I don't know, making it more vulnerable in some different way, or maybe just amping down what kind of health or output it does. But everything about this seems to line up. Okay, so development and operation team's comment. We also received an incredible amount of feedback related to units that were mentioned above. Making each unit unique and balanced is the core concept of the game. Battle director Hogaki further elaborated in the dialogue. Okay, so they point you back to this. That being said, they did not say anything about the Sazabi, so, you know, don't worry about that one. That one's not in there. They just kind of left that alone. So now we have rules. So point capture, domination, and destruction. I will say a lot of my time I enjoyed mostly in either domination and destruction. Point capture wasn't bad. In fact, you know what? I'm going to take that back a little bit. Destruction was fun, but domination and point capture was probably where I did most of my stuff. Destruction, kind of, I won't say that it was really bad in terms of the momentum when it came to the attacking team, but like, sometimes it was a little bit hard to come back from, especially like when it comes to destruction in particular, because you're constantly like advancing for A and B. Depending on whether or not you manage to get the checkpoint between that point and where you have to actually plant, that's a long trek back. Depending on whether you're attacking or even defending, it can be a little bit punishing to get back to where you're supposed to be doing your job. Those maps definitely did not hold back in terms of using their layout to kind of mess with the defense team as well as the attackers. Point capture and domination, pretty simple. Point capture in particular was kind of fun. Domination kind of made you run all over the place, so if you ever wanted a mode that just kind of forced you to learn certain maps, that one's definitely one of the better ones. Though I do agree with some of the other people saying that there should be just a version of practice, or at least a different mode on the side that lets you just traverse the maps and mess around. so that you can just kind of see them in your own time. Let's see, so rules, reviews, and requests. It was fun to think about which units were better suited for offense and which ones for defense. I liked extra time. It made matches thrilling. Rules weren't clear to all players. I like a mode in which I can study the maps at my own pace. And that's where it was mentioned for the maps thing. Rules weren't clear to all players is kind of interesting too. I feel like most people that I played with or watched kind of had a pretty good idea of it. I will say that because it was a network test, I don't think a lot of people were really taking things that seriously. And most of them were just like, I just want to fight with robots. I don't want to do objectives. Fuck objectives. I'm just trying to see what these suits do. They're the kid that runs into the arcade with no money, just slapping the buttons and sitting in chairs and just taking up space. Like, now, what are you gonna do, right? That's just how some people behave. So I kind of do wonder how that's gonna feel when they maybe do like a quick mode alongside ranked and stuff in the future for the full release, and if that'll kind of feel the same or not. So we received lots of positive feedback about the 3 modes, including ones related to inherent fun in choosing units and constant suspense in matches. On the other hand, we also received opinions of the rules not being clear and requests for a game mode where players can roam free to analyze at their own leisure. The responsible will consider how to best convey this information to make it easier to access. I do feel like they should let you roam the maps. I don't know what they can do other than just doing either hands-on tutorials like we talked about before, or just showing them in like information screens, you know, that you can just kind of plonk into. Hopefully they do one or the other, maybe even both. And then we go into customization items. So this is kind of interesting, especially since there wasn't any real, what's the word? Like urgency outside of just getting the ones specifically for the network test, because those are the only ones that really carried over. So unit skins are pretty popular. Weapon skins, of course, because you can see them. Stamps, considering that people didn't really know how to use stamps in the first place, I'm surprised that this actually isn't higher for that. I have no interest and whatnot, but like, you know, generally just good. Same with the icons. Ornaments being a little lower, kind of odd. Kind of figured if they were this good for the skins themselves and like having something kind of wiggling around. Maybe if there's different ornaments in the future that are just nicer. But I liked mine. I like having a little Sazabi on my shit. And then MVP. The animations are actually pretty good for those, so I enjoyed that. Let's see, reviews and requests for customization items. I like to see more units based off the original work, like the Gundam G3. I want to see more variations, and this definitely brings up a good one. I wouldn't mind having more referential stuff, maybe if it's even just ace colors or team colors. We'll just have to see what happens with that. So one of the focuses in the network test was to observe how customization in battle stamps and various other items perform under a variety of scenarios. Meanwhile, we have received lots of requests for items and customization features related to the original series. We'd like to address these requests by assuring you that your voice has been heard, and we are already adjusting current unit skins, icons, and items, as well as working on new ones based on your feedback. I also feel like a lot of people were just kind of like, the accent colors are lame. I know that they're supposed to have different rarity rankings and stuff, but like, please, please just pull from the things that you can already make that people recognize. I beg. So now we have game data. Top units sorting evolved. Overall, of course, Pale Rider being the all unit. Barbatos being in third's a little surprising, except for the fact that it is obviously not a shooty suit, not quite as safe as running Sazabi in and of itself. So maybe I shouldn't be too taken aback. Zaku 2 range coming in fourth, a little interesting, especially when we also see Gundam in there. But considering how little people touch things like the Methus or Sniper Tombs, first of all, I'm surprised that those are not too far behind. Seeing the Gym and Attorney and the Marosai being that low is a little unfortunate, but you know, considering that they're making changes to at least these two, not super surprising. Guntank being 8th, not bad. But in general, this seems pretty par of the course. Most teams had at least this swath of people. Zaku 2 could probably be interchanged with several other like assaults or whatever, but we'll see what happens with that in time, and of course as well when they eventually start to put in more suits. Now here's where things get a little neat. So this is overall. Then we go based on top 100 players and rated ranking. And things shift a little bit. And in some cases they shift a whole lot. Because, you know, Exia was in 10th before and now it's in 5th. Barbatos actually hits 2nd instead. And Sazabi takes 1st. Gundam and Pale Rider still hanging on for dear life. Although, you know, Pale Rider suddenly goes from 1st to being hanging on by a thread. Zaku 2 gets bumped down. Turn A still at the ass bottom along with Maraside. Gun Tank at this point drops off quite a bit. And I'm not super surprised by that, but it is a little unfortunate. Methus dropping down is also a little rough considering that team comps and having support units, but that's probably why Pale Rider is still here. Because it can at least drop down like an area heal. In fact, thinking about what most of these guys do, there's not really any other support stuff in here other than like a ranged revive here. Maybe throwing armor on for the trooper. So yeah, mostly just output and self-sufficiency, right? Gundam still has a good spread of different attack modes and skills that it can use to defend itself. Exia is another assault, which means both of these, despite their frailty, are pretty solitary. And Pale Rider can just kind of defend itself and heal itself, while Sazabi literally has an entire shield's worth. And a lot of traversal when you're using that Tomahawk properly, so not surprising. Most used units by top 10 players, and this is where things take another huge shift. Why? What? Is that tied? Is that supposed to be tied instead? So Sniper 2s took up 2 spots in top 5. What the fuck? Huh. No, I guess it's not tied. It's just literally by the top 10. So Sniper 2, 2 Gundams. Dom Trooper being top dog. I actually liked the ease of use for this unit. It actually felt really good. And I'm normally not a fan of Scooty suits in GBO2, but like, this is kind of smooth sailing, and it does have, like, even its ult's pretty nice. Barbatos dropping off a little bit is kind of funny. And then, of course, Sazabi taking 2nd because it's just a chonky motherfucker. The only oddball here, I would say, although maybe not so much, because even in the top 100, Ashimar still made 10th. So it being at the ass end, probably not super surprising. But yeah, most of this is part of the course. The fact that there's several folks in here who are also doing Sniper 2 is probably why people are pissed off at that suit alongside Barbatos, but we'll see if that changes or not. I highly doubt any adjustments that they will do will actually mean much for its general output. Breakdown for the number of players by rate. This seems pretty part of the course considering where we started. A lot of people just kind of maintained or were around it. Definitely a hard taper from here, from the low end, and definitely by like 2250 and onward. Not super surprising considering that I don't think there were a lot of big shifts past maybe the 2nd day or so. And of course everyone being snugly from like 1950 to 2000. So not bad. And then we have just a quick quip here. Future developments. Finally, we would like to thank all of our players for participating in the PC Network test. Your opinions and feedback will be used as a reference for further improvements and adjustments leading up to the official release. As stated in the dev blog number 2, the next network test will be for game consoles in the United States, Canada, and Japan regions. Details will be available in late May. Ooh, so okay, we do have a time frame, but not a specific day. So late May, so we hope that you look forward to it. Thank you for supporting Gundam Evolution. So of course, with the announcement only coming in late May, that means that we're definitely going to be looking at maybe a summer, if they're really pushing it, early fall release for the game. Considering where the network test left us for Gundam Battle Operation 2 as well, if they are trying to do these maybe a little side by side, then they definitely got time. They definitely had time to sort themselves out. So hopefully they take a lot of that time to do what they had to do to make this as smooth a transition into the full game as possible. And like I said, I'm not super sure if I'm actually going to bother doing anything for the console network tests in particular. I'm probably just going to stick to PC, but hopefully if you guys are trying to get in there that you have fun, and hopefully get in there in the first place if it's going to be limited. And until next time, this is Gustav the 13th. I will talk to you guys later.